Imagine trying to get a job without a social security number or a social insurance number, renting an apartment without credit history, or accessing healthcare without any sort of insurance. And that sounds really impossible, right? And yet, millions of people make it work quietly under the radar. I always used to wonder about this topic, like how these undocumented immigrants manage to survive in countries like the US or Canada without having proper documentation. So I thought, okay, let me do some video on it by digging some more details around this particular aspect so that I can fill my curiosity and I can also share my findings. So that's the motive behind this video. So in this video, let us understand how they do it, how do they find jobs, secure housing, or even send their kids to school. What industries rely on their labor and how do they navigate systems that were not designed for them. In many surprising ways, these people adapt, survive, and also contribute to the economies that they live in. And if you are new to my channel, my name is Gautam Telugu. I talk about HR careers, life in Canada, and much more beyond that. Let's start with the basics. An undocumented immigrant is someone who does not have legal permission to live or work in a country. If someone becomes undocumented, does not directly mean the person has crossed the border illegally. There is more to it than that. For such people, we can categorize them into three groups. The first one likely are overstaying visas. This is one of the most common ways people become undocumented. For example, someone might enter Canada on a visitor visa or the United States on a student visa but decide to stay after it expires. In general sense, they don't want to go back to their home countries because that may not be an option due to economic instability or sort of a political unrest or even due to their personal circumstances. And second set of people are those crossing borders without papers. And these set of people enter without documentation altogether. Just in the US, this often means crossing the southern border. In Canada, it might involve slipping through remote entry points. And third set of people are those who might have lost their status. Means some people start with legal status but lose it over a period of time. And perhaps their asylum application was denied or a temporary work permit expired. Whatever may be the cause, once someone becomes undocumented, their access to resources and opportunities drastically shrinks. Let us now understand the important aspect of this video, which is like how do these undocumented immigrants make it up for a living? Without legal status, finding a stable, well-paying jobs is extremely challenging. And most undocumented immigrants work in industries that rely on manual labor or informal arrangements. First in such industry is agriculture. In the US, the agricultural sector heavily depends on undocumented workers, where studies show that about half of all farm workers in the US lack legal status. And these are the people harvesting fruits, vegetables, and other crops we all consume. And if you compare that with Canada, seasonal agriculture also relies on migrant workers, especially in provinces like Ontario and Quebec. And some enter through temporary programs, but others remain after their permits expire, taking on undocumented roles. Think about those fresh strawberries you buy in the grocery store. There are high chances they were picked by someone working long hours in extreme heat for low wages, often with no health benefits or job security, of course. And the second industry which might likely attract undocumented workers is construction. And this is another industry that depends on undocumented labor, whether it's for building homes or repairing infrastructure or renovating house spaces. And these jobs often involve long hours, physically demanding tasks, and little oversight. And have you ever walked by a construction site in a booming city like Toronto or Vancouver? There's a good chance some of the workers there don't have papers. And perhaps the third industry is food service and hospitality. And here, undocumented workers are pretty common in places like restaurants, hotels, and event venues. They wash dishes, clean hotel rooms, prepare food, and handle maintenance tasks. Jobs that are often unseen but are essential for those industries to operate. And the fourth category is domestic work or caregiving, or sort of housekeeping and nannying. which probably come into this category. And these roles often operate outside of formal systems with wages paid in cash to avoid legal complications. Understanding those industries is one segment. But the second question that I had, like, how do they even secure housing? Because securing housing can be particularly challenging in countries like US or Canada, and and it becomes even tougher for the undocumented immigrants because without legal documents or credit history, some traditional housing options are off the table for a lot of people. Even those with such high documentation, sometimes they struggle to find the houses. So, in majority of the cases, they rent informally, means they rent directly from landlords who don't require background checks or leases. While this provides shelter, it often comes with higher costs or less secure living conditions. If something happens at your apartment, you cannot go and fight with your landlord, or you cannot call for help from the government to probably speak on your behalf, right? So you don't have the rights like any other person who might be legally living in that city. They may also share housing with others in the community to save some money, and it's pretty common to find multiple families living in a single apartment or a house. Imagine a two-bedroom apartment in Toronto being shared by three or four families under the same roof. And that's the reality for many undocumented workers trying to make the ends meet. But I still wonder, why do they want to leave their home country? Of course, I understand those people who probably facing war might want to escape out of it, but there are still people from some countries, even India for that matter, people do come and probably live legally. That still surprises me and stuns me on that point. And the other important category that people will probably not be having access is to healthcare, which is one of the most difficult challenges for these undocumented immigrants. In the US, of course, they need to have an insurance, or even India, or even in Canada, they need to have public health systems. Means they need to have some sort of a documentation or proof of residence or work permit or whatever it is. Because in the US, hospitals are required to provide emergency care regardless of your legal status. Of course, they might be able to get the medical attention in case of emergency. But if you have to have sort of a follow-up treatments or any sort of a medication, often that comes with a high cost that you have to spend from your pocket. In Canada, most likely these immigrants may not have access to the provincial healthcare, but certain community clinics provide low cost or free services to those people. I'm assuming they may be relying on those when they really, really need that attention. In most likely, unfortunately, many of these undocumented individuals avoid seeking medical help unless it's an absolute emergency, with the fear that of high costs or exposure to the authorities. The high likelihood that anybody can report you in case they suspect that you're not able to provide enough documentation to get the medical care. But these people's lives without legal status involves constant problem solving. So let's understand some of the ways undocumented immigrants navigate everyday's life. In all likelihood, they work off the books and they are paid in cash or work under the table to avoid legal scrutiny. While this provides income, it also means no benefits, protections, or job security. And the second chance that they might be doing is use fake IDs or borrow documents to access work or services. While this sounds risky, it's often seen as a necessity to survive to get past that situation. I'm in no support of these illegal immigrants or the undocumented immigrants, but this immigration is certainly a complex issue and opinions on it vary widely for person to person. Nevertheless, the reality is that millions of people live and work in countries such as the US and Canada without legal status, and they face significant challenges in their daily lives while often making important contributions to the communities in which they reside and also support the economy indirectly. While that may not be a welcome move by the government officials, but still. Now that you've gotten a glimpse into their world, what are your thoughts? Put it in the comments. And thank you for watching Details.